Well, today we're doing things a little bit different. I am the guest, and I am the host. My name is Matt Opsahl. I am the course manager and assistant chief here at UND Aerospace. I'm the course manager for our jet transition course, or the 480 course, as most people know it as. I've been doing this, teaching this course since about 2005. Prior to that, I was at the airlines. So about 21 years now of teaching in our 480 course, where we first started with the CRJs, obviously, and now onto the ALSIMs. We've kind of decided to put together a collection of common questions or things that people aren't quite sure about before they come in for the 480 course, and just kind of laid out there so that people that are, going to be taking 480 in the next 6 months to a year maybe can watch this video and start preparing before they show up to 480. First question is, what is AVIT 480? Aviation 480 or AVIT 480 is our jet transition course, and it's where we basically take you from a single pilot environment in a piston aircraft to a multi-pilot environment, CRM, in a jet transition a simulator. The main focus of it is to get you to understand how a ground school works. A lot of people have never been through an airline ground school. You've been to ground school here at UND, but airline ground schools are a little bit different, and that's what ours is tailored around. I went and got my A320 type rating and about 3 years ago, and the course is tailored very much like that. So when you go out in the real world and you are getting ready to join the airlines and go to their ground school, this is what you can basically expect, is what you see in 480. All right. Next question. How does the class help students progress in their career? Again, it's learning things now that is very difficult to learn on the job, and it's better to learn now. Things like how to study for ground school. We just talked about that. What is a flow? The flow in the airlines is a little bit different from what you're used to at UND. Flows in the airlines are things that you memorize. It's not the checklist, though, and that's kind of the difference between UND and what you'll see out in the airlines. You're not memorizing a checklist. You're memorizing a flow, and then you're using a checklist to go back to the flow and make sure that you covered the primary items. We also teach CRM. That's a real tough one. People are not used to multi-pilot environments. They're used to just single pilots doing everything by themselves, and that's hard because you have segregation of duties that's between the two crew members, and you really want to stick to what your duties are, and they stick to what their duties are, but there's still communication between the two pilots, for anything outside of the normal duties that's to progress the flight safely. So CRM is a big one that we tend to hit quite a bit on that one. What simulators do we have for this course, and what makes them unique? We are using ALSIMs, or ALSIM is actually how it's pronounced. The ALSIM is configured for an Airbus style of flying. That's what we currently use it as. What's unique about it is that we can actually make it a Boeing style of flying too. Right now it's a side stick, which is Airbus. But if we decided that we wanted to go Boeing, we can pull literally yoke out of the floor, remove the side stick, and a couple other things get changed, and then it's more of a Boeing style of flying. We haven't used that yet because it does require a whole new TCO, a whole new stand man, but we will be in the future kind of transitioning or floating between the Airbus and Boeing throughout the semesters. Next question. For students getting ready for registration this week, is there a unique process to register for the class? 480 is a different beast altogether. What confuses people is that we have a wait list. So anybody that wants to take 480, let's just say in the spring, okay? They're currently flying in the fall. They finished up to 15 lessons in 415. They can now register for 480 for the next session or for the next semester. When you do that, you're waitlisted. Now, does that mean it's in order? No. You are just saying, I want to take the class. It doesn't matter when you put yourself in that. If somebody else is before you, they've been on the wait list for 3 weeks, and you get all your 415 flying done, you go to the top, and you're the next one in. So where you are on the wait list is means absolutely nothing. Once you finish your 415 flying, you contact me, and I will then add you to Campus Connection, and then you are officially in the course. The nice thing is that we just have everybody register, let's just say for the first session. Even if you don't want to take the first session, we just put everybody in the waitlist in the first session, and those that finish get put in. If you finish and you need to be in the second session, I can move you into the second session automatically. But let's just say that the first session closes, I move everybody into the second session then. You don't have to do anything. And then the third session is the same way. You move right into the third session right after that. You don't have to do anything. Moving between semesters is different, but in the sessions, I can move you. All right, next question is, how many sessions of 480 are there? It depends on the semester. So in the fall semester and the spring semester, we have three sessions. They're each 6 weeks. It's not a full semester. It's just a part semester. And then in the summer, we have 2 sessions. So over the course of the year, we have 8 sessions, and each session can hold anywhere from about 30 to 40 students per. And on that, you are going to get a flight partner. And people always are sending me messages saying, hey, I'd like to request so-and-so. The flight partners are only given as per the launches. So if you sign up for a launch and your buddy signs up for the same launch, you guys will be flight partners. We can't assist with that, though, because it's just a first come, first serve. So what happens is after you get into Campus Connection, the next day it'll open up for, I take that back, 2 weeks before the ground school starts is when the launches open, but 24 hours after Campus Connection is when you can sign up for those launches inside that 2-week window. And it's just first come, first serve. So whatever launch is available, that's what you choose. And if your buddy did the same thing, great. If not, then you'll be paired up with whoever signed up for that same launch. Next question. What do students need to know for Lesson 1? Lesson 1 is an introductory lesson. We do want you to have your flows memorized, though. The best thing to use is the TCO for that. It's going to tell you exactly which flows we want you to have memorized. We do expect up through about the taxi flow, but if we can get further, we definitely want to get further. But that would be the minimum, is up to the taxi flow. People think, well, if I just have to get up to the taxi flow, I'll just memorize that. Well, the next problem with that is that 2 days later, for Lesson 2, you have to know all the flows. So if you decide that you're only going to work up through the taxi flow, okay, but you got a lot of studying ahead of you between the Lesson 1 and Lesson 2. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you are studying more than what the lesson calls for, so that you're just getting it out of the way and you're not getting behind in the course as we progress into the lessons. Next question is, what are some common mistakes students make in their sim lessons? This one's kind of tough. I don't want to call it mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. I would say the mistake would be showing up unprepared, coming to the lesson and not using the TCO to tell you what you need to know and what you need to have memorized. That's probably the biggest problem we have, is that students show up and their flows are really weak, or they haven't looked over, any of the profiles for that lesson that are required, and they're just coming completely unprepared. It's one of those things where it's a very front-heavy course. So when you're experiencing the course over the course of 12 lessons, the first 6 lessons are very, very front-heavy. A lot of studying. You're going to feel like, I can't do this for 12 lessons. Well, after lesson 6, it really, really, really falls off. And you can do it. Everyone's done it. But the big thing is that you stick with it and you put the time in at the beginning, because the rest of the course is much more enjoyable when you have everything memorized and you are in a good position going into the second half of the course. As for common things that students have issues with, I won't call them mistakes because it is part of the learning process, but things that we tend to see is the CRM aspect is probably the biggest thing. We'll see a first officer doing stuff that the captain's supposed to be doing. Now, they think that they're helping, but when you have your duties each separated for each other, you don't want to cross those over unless the captain tells you to do it. I'll give you a prime example of something that I did when I was a pilot. It was the pilot flying was the captain. I was the first officer, and we were going into, I think it was Charlotte, North Carolina. The captain had taken his headset off for whatever reason, and I think it was wiping it down or something. And we got a vector from our nav course to start a turn towards, starting for the approach. He didn't hear it, and I just reached up and I turned the heading bug to whatever the heading was and hit heading mode, and the plane started turning. Well, the captain didn't know what was going on, thought that the plane was just turning off course, so he grabbed the yoke and turned off the autopilot and turned it back. And that wasn't my position to do that. I was not the pilot flying. I should have confirmed with the pilot flying to say, hey, they want us on this heading. Do you want me to do it, or did you want to do it? But that's a perfect CRM scenario of why you always want to make sure that you are sticking to your duties. The end of course, so people ask, what is the testing like in 480? And there's actually 3 tests. So the first set, lessons 1 through 3, are your procedures, and that's flows, checklists, all that kind of stuff, just in the CPT. You're not flying the sim at all. And then we have a test on lesson 3, and that's your procedures validation, and that's 10% of your ground school grade. And then we do maneuvers, lessons 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and that's like flying, your stalls and steep turns, 3D approaches, missed approaches, those types of things. And then on lesson 8, you're graded, you and your flight partner, as both the captain and first officer, and that's 10% of your ground school grade. And then the last 4 lessons, 9, 10, 11, and 12, are lofts, and that's where we're going point A to point B. So we're doing like Charlotte to Atlanta, Atlanta back to Charlotte, Boston to Newark, Newark back to Boston. And the last 2 lessons of that, you are graded 11 and 12, and that's called your LOE, your line-oriented evaluation. What are some tips to help students succeed in 480? I think the biggest thing, like we just talked about, is coming prepared. Another part of this question is how to study and what's the best way to memorize flows. Studying is best done at home for the memorization. People like to come into the CPT and try and memorize their flows. The problem with that is there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of commotion, not commotion, but just a lot of people talking and stuff up there. And it's not real good area for memorizing. So the best thing to do is literally just make flashcards at home, memorize your flows, and then when you come to the CPTs for your required time, that's the time to practice together with your flight partner. Trying to memorize at home, or I'm trying to memorize up there, it doesn't seem to work out well. People seem to try it and they're like, no, this isn't working for me. It's not a bad idea to come into the CPTs and just find everything where all the buttons are, and you can always stop down at my office. I'll be more than happy to point things out or help you out with stuff. But when it comes to memorizing the flows, the best way to do it is just at home and then come into the CPT and practice with your flight partner. Let's see here. Can you break down what CRM is and why it's important for our pilots to practice before heading into the industry? That's cockpit resource management. We've kind of talked about it throughout this whole thing here, but CRM is really the standard that all airlines use with pilots in the cockpit. It's how they work together, and it's really something that we push pretty hard in 480, because if you get it down here, coming out of a single pilot environment, it makes your life so much easier when you go out to the airlines. We still see things like people wanting to bring the gear up as the pilot flying. That's why you have 2 pilots. One person is flying the plane. One person is doing the gear when they are told by the pilot flying to do it. So it is a good thing to get down, and we promise you that you will, I won't say be 100% perfect at it, but you'll have a really, really, really good understanding of it when you finish 480 course after 5 or 6 weeks. One other question that I get asked a lot is, actually 2 questions, is can we accelerate through the course? Meaning, can I get this done? I'm coming back from another job. I need to get done in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And the answer to that is no. We are required for 5 weeks to make sure that you get everything done. The ground school is done remotely, and it starts a week before the sims start, and you need to be here for that. You have to be here 1 week before the sims start, because you got to get 6 hours of CPT time with your flight partner upstairs, and you can't do that remotely. So if you're planning on taking 480, anticipate that you will be here for 5 to 6 weeks. That's just what we have to have for that. Next question, and this is the last one actually. Would you recommend anything else for the students to do before heading off to the airlines? I guess I'm kind of split on this, because a lot of students, use Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that's great, except that you can learn some negative transfer, and then the airlines have to untangle that when you get there. So I'd be really careful with doing anything like that, making sure that you're doing procedures properly, versus when you get to the airlines, now they have to fix what you've negatively memorized. Outside of that, that's really, there isn't a whole lot more that I would suggest. Just let the airlines handle the training for you. That is the end of our questions for 480. If you have anything that wasn't answered, have a question about something that wasn't answered, you can put it in the comments below and we will answer it from there, or you can get in contact with me, matthew.upsahl@und.edu, or 74480.